Hi, welcome back to Retired with a Full-Hearted Home. I did a video series about my husband and I selling our family home. And I forgot one thing. I forgot a really important data point, which is that we did reach out to a cash investor to see how much they would give us for our house. And so I thought it would be a good data point to give to you all so that if you're thinking about doing something like that, you'll have at least one case study for how much we would have gotten. And it's a unique case study because we got the estimate from the investor and then we sold traditionally on the open market. So it just so happened that we got one of those flyers, we buy houses for cash as is. You don't have to do any work. We settle in a matter of a couple of weeks, guaranteed. And it came in the mail just at the time we had made the decision to sell the house, but we had not actually started the pre-sale renovations or signed contracts with our contractors. And so it was perfect timing, and we thought, what the heck, let's call them, see what they'll give us for the house. And I got to be honest, we were a bit overwhelmed, even at our age and our state of health, which was pretty good. We were still overwhelmed at the thought of 9 months of hard work. Things can go wrong with contractors, so there's some risk. And then also, we were anxious to get started on a normal retirement life, so why not start 9 months sooner? So it seemed like a good idea to at least check it out, even if we weren't convinced. I'm not going to call out the particular investor. If you Google cash for houses in your area, you'll see that there are just a plethora of them. And so you can take a look at them, and they all have Google ratings and things like that. So the one that we contacted was big in our area. I think it covered 5 or 6 states. It was well known, and it got reasonable reviews. So the first thing we did was, when we got the flyer, is we looked at the website. It compares selling traditionally with a real estate agent to selling with the investor. So no commission or fees, and they compare that against 6% commission and fees. And you'll see, I'm going to show you what we've netted. And we paid less than 4% total commissions. No closing costs, and they compare that to 2% closing costs. Well, closing costs for the seller, or you can look this up, they're generally around 1.5%. Appraisals not required. Immediate as-is offer. Pick your closing date. No repairs needed. That's a big plus right there. Packing and moving assistance. So that's a big plus, especially for seniors. However, you can contract with somebody else to do that. In fact, the investor that we reached out to with our house is actually not an investor. They're what's known as a wholesaler. So a wholesaler specializes in buying properties below market value with the intention of selling your sales contract to someone else, and they make a profit. So one of the pitfalls of this, and this is probably not something that you would find out unless you read reviews of your particular wholesaler, but one of the pitfalls is that they can back out. There's fine print in the contract, or even if there isn't fine print in the contract, they back out and walk away, and with little to no explanation. There are a number of people who wrote reviews about this happening to them. So it's not as ironclad as it may be advertised to be, or as simple. If they sign a cash agreement with you and then they can't turn around and sell your contract to someone else, they may back out on you, and you may be back to square one. So we contacted the investor. They gave us their number, and we declined. However, I will show you what their offer was and how that compares to what our house actually sold for. Okay, so here we go. The first column is what we netted, and I have a whole video on that. And you can see that we sold it for $750, what our real estate commissions were, what our closing costs were. We spent $75,000 on pre-sale renovation. And I did add living expenses for the 9 months that we were renovating the house, because when you sell to an investor, One of the distinct advantages is a very quick sale. So a lot of people are looking for monetary savings of those expenses because every month that they have the house, it costs them money. So in our case, 9 months of living expenses there was almost $9,000. After you factor that in, we netted $623,000 and change. With the all-cash investor, they quoted us sub $500,000 for our house, and they wouldn't give us an exact number. So I put a range in here of $475,000 to $499,000 to cover what I think they would have came in at. No real estate agent commissions or compensation, no settlement costs or taxes. When you factor in a couple of weeks of living expenses, presuming you settle in 2 weeks with the cash investor, you net that $475 to $500. So comparing that to our net of $623, we would have lost between $123,000 and $148,000, which is between 25 and 31% of the total market value of the house. And the middle column is if we had done an intermediate case where we did not invest the $75,000 into pre-sale renovation. We didn't do any improvements. We just cleared the house out, listed it on the open market with a real estate agent. And I have a whole video on where the $620,000 list price came from. But assuming we could list and sell at $620,000 without the renovations, you can see what we would have paid in real estate compensation, settlement costs, and our living expenses. Let's say in that intermediate case, it would have taken us 4 months to sell the house. Our living expenses would have been around $3,900. And so we would have netted about $580,000 when it was all said and done. Still, that's higher than what we would have gotten with the investor by a significant amount, by $80,000 to $105,000, or 16 to 22% of the market value. So it is a significant difference. The investors really tout that no real estate commissions, no closing costs, and that sounds good, but those add up to about 5% of your total market value, and the investor cost is between 16 to 31%. So why did I want to show you guys this? I wanted to show this because a lot of these all-cash investors benefit from seniors who are overwhelmed at the thought of putting their house on the market. And hey, we were 56, 7, and in great shape, and it was overwhelming to us too. But 30% of its market value is a huge bite out of your profit that you deserve after all those years of owning the house and dealing with the house. It really is a convenience fee, because these investors, they don't buy your house because they want to live in it, and they don't buy your house because they want to fix it up and sell it. They're going to turn around and sell it to somebody else, and they want to make their profit first. If you have any time at all to put your house on the market, you are going to be so much better off financially. So I'll give you another example. My husband sold his parents' house for them. They moved into assisted living in their late 80s, early 90s, and they had a house that was, not in the greatest condition. It was built in the 50s, and so everything about the house was old. So he cleared out the house and he hired a real estate agent. Fortunately, he one of his parents' friends, believe it or not, was a real estate agent. She was in her 80s. She sold the house for my husband, and she was a godsend because she understood the situation. She had helped many of her friends over the years, and she recommended that he list the house at the full market value at the time, which was about $325,000. And my husband and I were like, there's no way that house is selling for $325,000. But we figured she knew better than we did, so they tried. It was on the market for a little over a month, didn't sell. And so they dropped the price to $285, and I think it sold within a couple of weeks after dropping the price. We were shocked. It was not that hard, it was not that difficult, and it didn't take that long. If an investor had stepped in, I can pretty much guarantee you they would not have even gotten $200,000 for the house. Listing it with a real estate agent, they came away with over $85,000 more. So I know it's no big surprise to anybody that investors aren't going to pay you what you could sell your house for on the open market. They have to make their profit as well. Now, I'm not as anti-investor as I sound like I am. Under the right circumstances, real estate wholesalers and investors can work out really well for a seller and might even be a godsend. There are times in life when money is not as important as time, and there are desperate situations that call for desperate measures. I hope that you don't find yourself in that situation, but if you do, there are two recommendations that most people make and that my husband and I certainly followed. And one is, first, know the market value of your property, your house, the house you're selling. And don't get that from the wholesaler. You can call real estate agents and have them come take a look at the property and see what they would list it for. And that will definitely give you a good idea of the market value of the house. Look at Zillow, look at, as comparable a property as you can find, and just know independently what you think the market value of your property is. And that way, when the investor gives you their offer, you can decide with full knowledge what cost is worth it to you. If you want a round number to use, basically, I think 30% is a good starting point. Take your market value of your property and expect that the wholesaler will offer you 60 to 70% of whatever that market value is. And if it's worth it to you and it works out for you, then that's all that matters. And then the second thing is, if you do decide you're going to go with a wholesale or a real estate investor with the offer, make sure you have either a real estate agent who can review the fine print or a real estate attorney review the fine print, keeping in mind that they can back out of their contract. And that way you have some legal help if it's needed and the wholesaler leaves you hanging. Anyways, that's just thought we'd put that out there. It's an interesting case study. We personally would have lost a ton of cash on an asset that we owned for 28 years and took great care of. And so that definitely did not make sense for us. So I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you're doing well, and see you in the next one.